Hello, I'm Nana Wrinklewings, and welcome to Whimsical Rhymes and Tales. The story I'm going to tell you today is called Once Upon a Puppy Tale, and I hope you enjoy it. It's actually a story that is partially true. It happened several years ago, and I took notes and wrote the story the other day, and now I'm going to tell it to you. Are you ready? Long ago, far away, there was once a house that was built upon a hill. Now, in that house, there were many windows and stairs, and a family of 4. Well, the only thing that seemed to be missing was a puppy. Well, that would never do. So when the opportunity arose, Bogey, a lively little rust brown and white sheltie, was added to the mix. What a fun puppy he was. He was always smiling and jumping around and ready to play. Now, as the story goes, Ava, a cute pig-tailed lass, believed this to be her puppy, and hers alone. Well, Bogey could always be found sleeping on the foot of Ava's bed at night, and this made Sophie very sad. So day after day, Sophie would ask for her own puppy, and finally her pleas were heard, and along came Sydney. Well, Sydney was a darling little long-haired black lab retriever with the biggest, most beautiful big brown eyes. Now, the house on the hill with all the windows and the stairs seemed complete. Sophie loved her Sydney, and Sydney loved Sophie. Every day, Sid could be seen roaming the hill behind the house and looking out over the town. She was very protective of Sophie and looked out for her if she fell down. She loved retrieving the ball when Sophie threw it, and at night, Sid would bound up the stairs to sleep in Sophie's room, and Bogey could always be found asleep on Ava's floor in the middle of her homework. Well, once a month, they would all pile into the car and they would head to the puppy spa, where their teeth would be cleaned and their nails would be trimmed, and they would be bathed and sheared. Well, now they all knew the routine, and when the word puppy spa was mentioned, well, Sid headed to the door, because waiting for it to open so that she could bound into the car. Bogey was not so enthused. When the door opened, Bogey had to be carried to the car, for this was not his cup of tea. Well, upon arrival at the puppy spa, he had to be coaxed a little bit, for he really just wanted the treats and not the bath and all that other stuff. And at the end of the day, they were picked up and they would both run out the door of the puppy spa. Well, Bogey, he couldn't wait to ditch the colorful ribbons tied around his neck, and Sid's ears would look like pigtails tied up with pink bows. As soon as the car door opened, Sid would head for the passenger seat, and Bogey, the floorboards in the back seat. You see, Sid thought she was a human, and so she sat up on her hind legs, looking out the window. Well, Bogey, he didn't like motion, and so he huddled on the floor in the back, hoping to be home soon. One thing they both knew for sure, however, was that the next stop would be a drive-through where they would get their treat. Well, time passed in the big house on the hill with the many windows and stairs, a family of 4 and 2 dogs, and Bogey and Sydney, they grew up. And before they knew it, Sid had become a mommy to 12 darling little puppies. She spent hours cleaning and feeding them as they all nestled around her. one puppy, Chelsea, always seemed to snuggle the closest. Well, Sydney was a great mommy, but finally she needed some help. She was all tuckered out, and she really needed to rest. It was time for her family to step in. So with tall bottles of formula in hand on the floor of the bedroom of the house on the hill with the many windows and the stairs and a family of 4 and now 2 dogs and 12 puppies, they all took turns feeding those little mouths every hour. Well, before long, they all began to stretch their legs and they'd run about in the garage. An empty children's swimming pool helped some to keep them corralled, but they were really growing so fast. Well, Bogey was beside himself. He really didn't quite know what to do. He just looked in confusion and amazement, but he did help Sid a little. At times he would keep the puppies corralled. He would shift them around with his nose, or he would gently pick them up with his teeth and put them back into the empty pool. Before long, the tiny puppies were 6 weeks old, and they were jumping around playfully all over the place. Many friends visited the house of 4 dogs, of a family of 4 and 2 dogs and 12 puppies, and asking to take home a puppy. Well, as hard as it was to give those cute little rascals up, slowly, they all had good homes. Nessie and Sky even got their own van. And little brown girl, a puppy with long, fluffy brown fur, now had a small boy to play with. Weezer, he found love with a large family. Sweet Pea went to Ava's best friend, and Thunder to Sophie's friend. Max moved up the street with neighbors. Indy was in love with her new owners, and Tiny Snoops drove away with a little girl. PJ jumped into the arms of a teenage boy and licked his face until he gently put her into his car. And Socks, a black puppy with one white paw, now had a huge yard to run and play with his father. Well, Chelsea was the only puppy left, and Ava and Sophie really wanted to keep at least one puppy. Besides, wouldn't Sydney feel lonely if all of her puppies were gone suddenly? Needless to say, now there was the big house on the hill with many windows and stairs, a family of 4, and now 2 dogs and 1 puppy. Well, they all could be found roaming the hill in the backyard, chasing each other about, playing catch with the ball, and in the evening snuggling in the house. One morning, however, everything changed. What was that noise? Chelsea thought to herself. Well, Chelsea was this curious little puppy, and this noise really had her attention. She pranced over to the fence and she listened. What was that? Well, she was curious, and she immediately began digging a hole under the fence, just big enough for her small black body and floppy little black ears, and she manipulated herself way under the fence. Whoa, it's a big world out here, she thought as her eyes grew big. Wow! She looked around and then she ran off to explore. Well, Bogey was not having any of this, for he loved adventures, and any chance that he got, he would run off down the block with Ava running after him. He loved adventures. Well, Bogey and Chelsea were both off now running. Needless to say, a little puppy and a small dog, they really didn't need much room to squirm under a fence, right? But Big Sid, a now fully grown lab retriever, well, that was a different story. And a lab retriever really did need a lot more room. Sid thought, I can do this. I have to do this. My puppy, I've got to get my puppy. So Sid crashed through the fence. Well, a little dazed for a moment, she looked around. Where was Chelsea? Sid looked up and down the street. Well, Chelsea and Bogey were already quite a ways into the woods. Sydney began sniffing her way after them. She had no idea how far ahead they might be, but she struggled along, running as fast as she could, desperately trying to find them. Where had they gone? She followed their scent for what seemed like miles, searching, though she was still far behind the other two. Chelsea was having the time of her life, racing through the woods and following the creek trail. There were so many scents to smell, and Bogey, he never missed a tree, so he almost lost sight of her. However, Sid had to stop at times to rest and drink water from the creek, and hunger was beginning to set in. She needed to lie down, but she didn't dare close her eyes. What if she missed seeing her puppy? Her eyes grew heavy. They remained open. Bogey looked around. Now, where did that puppy go, he thought. He followed his nose that led him deeper and deeper into the woods. Suddenly, his paw caught on a branch and he twisted his back leg. Oh, he lay there for hours, whining, but no one heard him in the forest. He was tired, he was hungry, he needed to keep going, but he found it painful to walk any further. Time passed. Darkness began to cover the forest. He chewed on some grass. The sunset and the sounds of the night owl and the distant coyotes filled the air. He shuddered as he wished he was back in the big house on the hill with the many windows and stairs and the family of 4 and 1 puppy. He wished he could cuddle with Ava. Sid lay in the grass beneath an old oak tree, dreaming of Sophie and the warmth of the covers on her bed. Where is Chelsea, she wondered. Where is my puppy? Will I ever see her again? Well, having discovered that their puppies were gone, the house on the hill with the many windows and the family of 4 was devastated. Ava and Sophie, they were in tears. Where are our dogs? They called to them in the quiet of the night, but no puppies. They searched for them after school, and they called out their names as the car drove up and down the street. No puppies. Days went by, and the house on the hill with many windows and stairs and a family of 4 was quiet and lonely. It had been nearly a week. Still no sign of them. Meanwhile, Sid trudged along, continuing her search, feeding only on grass and other plants along the way. Bogey, in pain, limped along slowly, dragging his tired little body. Holding his back hind leg in the air, he struggled to walk. He would never catch up with Chelsea this way. He was aware that he had lost her. He looked around, unsure of the direction. He needed to drink some water, so he headed back to the creek, where he laid down to rest for a while. Where could Chelsea be? He thought, I need to find her trail again. Well, back home at the house on the hill with the many windows and stairs and a family of 4, there were no dogs running around on the hillside. There were no rides to the puppy spa in the car, and there was no snuggling at night with the warm, furry friends. Their whole family was sad. 11 days passed as they sat quietly at the dinner table looking out at the empty backyard, longing for their dogs. They missed their puppies so much. Just then, Ava sat up straight in her chair. Did you hear something? What was that? Everybody looked at each other in wonder. I don't know. And they heard it again. It sounded like a scratching noise, maybe in the garage. Ava got up to check. She opened the door to the garage. "Oh, oh," she cried out. "Look, she picked up the tired little puppy, Chelsea. Chelsea, you're back." Everyone jumped up from the table in disbelief as they ran to hug the small black puppy. Tears flowed as the family of 4 felt so thankful that Chelsea was home. "I can't believe it, Chelsea. You found your way home. You've never been anywhere besides our backyard. How did you find your way home?" Sophie asked. She was wondering if the others might also find their way home. Chelsea's tail was wagging as she licked them, all but her tiny body, because she was just too tired to move much more. She drank some water and she gobbled up a treat before Ava and Sophie ran some warm water with bubbles in the bathtub. She was so dirty. They bathed her and they wrapped her snugly in warm blankets, where she collapsed on the floor. It felt so good to be protected again. She closed her eyes and finally slept. All of the strange night sounds in the forest were finally gone. Sophie was so thankful Chelsea was back, but she missed Sid and Ava missed Bogey. They were afraid they would never see them again, for anything could have happened. If only Chelsea could tell them where she had been. They wondered if she had seen them. Well, another day passed, and Chelsea, she didn't stray very far from the house with many windows and stairs and the family of 4. She was really not up for any other adventures. It was Saturday, and Sophie and Ava were watching a movie on TV. What was that? Someone was at the front door. Maybe a package. So Sophie got up from the sofa and walked to the front door. She looked out of the small window first to see who it might be, because she knew not to open the door unless she knew who was there. But she couldn't see anything. So she called the rest of her family. The door opened. Oh, everyone cried out. Tears flowed. There stood a very tired Sydney. Her eyes were half closed, and they were red from lack of sleep. Her body was limp with pain and exhaustion. "Sid!" Sophie hugged her. "Sid!" Everyone came running as Sid fell onto the carpet at their feet. Chelsea came bounding down the stairs, started licking her mommy. Ava had to wonder about Bogey. She opened the door and she ran outside and she looked up and down the street. No Bogey. She was so grateful, though, that one of their dogs and the puppy had returned home. Fed and bathed, Sid and Chelsea lay on the floor of the house on the hill with many windows and the family of 4, and now 1 dog and 1 puppy. Too tired to think, but loving their family's touch. The hours passed, and the sun was playing hide and seek. It started to rain. Ava suddenly remembered she had left her bicycle outside, and she ran to retrieve it. She looked up just in time to see a rainbow as the sun hid behind a cloud. Wait, what was that coming down the sidewalk? Could it be? Oh, it was Bogey. He was slowly limping his way home in the rain. She ran down the block to pick up the wet, shaggy dog while crying and hugging him all the way home. It was all such a miracle. Both dogs and their puppy had somehow found their way home again. Oh, it was a time for tears and a time for treats and a time for another bath. No one would ever know where their journey had led them. It's a true puppy tale. And for now, it really didn't matter, though, because they were all last seen laying together that night in the big house on the hill with the many windows and stairs. The family of 4 and 3 tails wagging, covered in blankets of love. I hope you enjoyed that story. Until next time, toodaloo.